Hello, everybody. Today is September 12th, 2025. It's approximately 11:10 a.m. And today we'll be talking a little bit more about Charlie Kirk. I promise that this isn't always going to be like a doom and gloom channel. But right now, this stuff is important. I think it's important to talk about, talk through it, process it, all these kinds of things, right? That kind of come along with something this detrimental in the realm of America, American politics. So, with that being said, they found the killer or the suspected killer of Charlie Kirk. I'm going to read this article from NBC News by Matt Lavietz, Tom Winter, Michael Cosner, Mark Santia, Jonathan Dienst, and Ken Delanian. So here we go. Officials have identified the person accused of fatally shooting conservative activist Charlie Kirk as 22-year-old resident Tyler Robinson. Utah Governor Spencer Cox said at a press conference on Friday morning that investigators arrested and identified Robinson after analyzing surveillance footage, interviewing Robinson's family members, and reviewing online messages between Robinson and his roommate. "We got him," Cox said, standing with FBI Director Kash Patel and other law enforcement officials. Kirk, a co-founder of Turning Point USA and an influential voice in the Trump administration, was shot and killed Wednesday during an event at Utah Valley University, a public school south of Salt Lake City. His killing launched a multi-day manhunt among local, state, and federal authorities. This is evidently Tyler Robinson right here, courtesy of Utah Governor's Office. Cox said that a family member of Robinson's reached out to a family friend who contacted the Washington County Sheriff's Office with information that Robinson had confessed to them or implied that he had committed the incident. According to Cox, investigators interviewed a family member of Robinson's who said he had become more political in recent years. The family member referenced a recent incident in which Robinson came to dinner prior to September 10, and in the conversation with another family member, Robinson mentioned Charlie Kirk was coming to UVU, Cox said. They talked about why they didn't like him and the viewpoints he had. Cox said that investigators interviewed Robinson's roommate, who showed authorities messages on Discord between Robinson and his roommate. The messages associated with the name Tyler state a need to retrieve a rifle from a drop point, leaving the rifle in a bush, engraving bullets, having left the rifle wrapped in a towel, and a mention of a scope and the rifle being unique, Cox said. Authorities said on Thursday that they recovered a high-powered bolt-action rifle in wooded area just off the university campus in conditions that match Robinson's messages. Cox said the rifle was Mauser model 9830 odd 6 caliber 36 caliber bolt action rifle and had a scope mounted on top of it. He added that inscriptions engraved on the casings found with the rifle. One of the inscriptions had he added that inscriptions engraved on. All right, 5 guys to write this, and like you guys can't get proper grammar here unless I'm reading it wrong. It's possible. I don't know. One of the inscriptions had the lyrics to the Italian folk song "Bella Ciao." Cox said, "I don't know who that is, so forgive my ignorance." Cox said another read, "Hey fascist, catch," with an up arrow, a right arrow, and 3 down arrows. A third stated, "If you read this, you are gay, LMAO." So I want to pause there for a second because I think it's a very good indication of the fact, I talked about demonic. Like, if you need evidence of humans being demonic, I think here it is. Like, he's telling him to catch he's telling him to catch a bullet casing, which wouldn't be accurate, but he's telling him to catch who he claims is a fascist, which is ironic in itself, and we will get into that later. And then if you read this, you are gay. The callousness of this, I mean, you have to be inhumane, and it's beyond deeply disturbed. Let's stop like using these terms that ominously like humanize people who really don't seem to be humans. They don't. I'm sorry. And we will get into this a little bit later after I finish reading the article, but the amount of people, again, justifying and celebrating online, and it's even worse now, which so you can kind of see how mainstream it is among this section of the left. It's just insane. It is rampant, and they focus on Charlie Kirk and what a bad guy he is, and not once do they mention how bad this person is. That should tell you all you need to know about what we're dealing with. According to Cox, the inscription on the casing fired said, "Notices, bulges, OWO, what's this?" The governor added that investigators also identified Robinson in surveillance from the Utah Valley University, where Kirk was killed on Wednesday, which showed him arriving to UVU at 8:29 a.m. in a gray Dodge Challenger. When investigators arrested Robinson early Friday, he was observed in consistent clothing with those surveillance images, Cox said. NBC News searches of state and national public records associated with Robinson's name and date of birth found no indication of the 22-year-old having a prior criminal record. Public records indicate that Robinson's last voter registration date was on July 13th, 2021, and his political party is none declared. Robinson went to Utah State University for one semester in 2021, a spokesperson for the university confirmed to NBC News. The event where Kirk was shot and killed was hosted by the school's chapter of Turning Point USA, a group Kirk founded that organizes and mobilizes young conservative. President Donald Trump, who announced Kirk's death on Wednesday, was again the first to share the suspect in Kirk's slaying was in custody on Friday morning. "I think with a high degree of certainty we have him in custody. Everyone did a great job. We worked with the local police, the governor, everybody did a great job," he said in an interview on Fox News this morning, which I saw that was on YouTube. I haven't watched it yet. Trump suggested that the suspect's father turned him into authorities. "Somebody that's close recognized even a little tilt of the head, which nobody else would do," Trump said. And somebody that was very close to him said, that's him, and essentially went to the father, went to a U.S. Marshal. And the father convinced the son, "This is it," Trump added. Trump reportedly warned throughout the interview that his information was preliminary, saying he is always subject to be corrected. Video released by authorities Thursday captured the person they described as the shooter running across a building's roof and descending into a grassy area below. The person can then be seen walking past a parking lot toward a busy road. Further images released show what appear to be a young man, thin man, wearing black long-sleeve t-shirts with an American flag on it, black sunglasses, an Adidas hat, jeans, and Converse sneakers. Almost done. Stay with me. Kirk's killing has prompted national outrage in recent days and broad condemnation of political violence from lawmakers on both sides of the aisle. This is certainly about the tragic political assassination of Charlie Kirk, Cox, Republican, said. But it is also much bigger than an attack on an individual. It is an attack on all of us. It is an attack on the American experiment. It is an attack on our ideals. Turning Point USA has not publicly commented on the arrest of the identification of the suspect. In a statement on Thursday, Turning Point USA said Kirk had faced thousands of threats throughout his life, but always prioritized reaching as many young Americans as possible over his own personal safety. "All of us will miss Charlie," the group said. "None of us will ever forget him." I second that. I think as I touched briefly on the last video, that I had kind of watched this young man grow. Yeah, I think when he started, I was just shy of 30 years old myself. He died at 31. But I had watched this young man kind of grow into this icon, right? Who took people to task with their flimsy arguments, and he did do it respectfully. And you're gonna see a lot of this on the internet if you go around really to anything like Instagram, Threads, Twitter. People are just trying to like smear him completely, right? And so they'll take a snippet of what he said, and in some cases, I've even seen them take some of what he said and then add some of their own language to it and put it in quotes as if he said it completely, right? It's not true. And I'll be doing a follow up in, well, probably next week to kind of show, what people have said about him as well as how people have come to his defense. Because there's so many claims that like he's racist, he's misogynist, he said that like black people are subpar. I mean, it's just crazy. It is insane the stuff they are putting out there. And to me that goes to right like what the problem is that we're actually dealing with. Again, you know, we are dealing with people who don't care about truth. They will lie, cheat, steal, and as I might have said, I said this might have been in a caption for a post, but and kill to win, right? And again, this isn't everybody on the left, but those who are celebrating it, those who are glad that this happened, yes, this is them without a doubt. And again, they should be ostracized from civilization. We should all work together. Those of us who still are willing to come to the table and have a conversation about our differences and our ideals and how to move forward. If we're ever going to heal, that needs to happen. These people need to be sent back to the darkest corners of the earth or their grandma's basement where they came from. Like, that's it. They shouldn't have a place at the table. I'm all for it if you have different opinions, but this is not that, okay? This is something entirely different. This is something where you would much rather see somebody who has opposing views than you killed, as opposed to have a dialogue. No, you don't. Sorry, that's not free speech. You have the right to express it, but that's not in the spirit of free speech. It's the opposite. It's the antithesis of it. To kill somebody, to silence them, and that comes on the heels of years of coercion and belittling and trying to smear people's character with names and mislabeling them. It's just funny to me how like there are still people that can't see this. Well, and this is probably the group they fall into, so I guess I shouldn't be surprised. So that being said, I want to take a quick dive into media and the narrative spin, okay? That I wouldn't say this is widespread in the media, but the day Charlie Kirk died, it's 2 days ago now, I was reading articles. And I like to read articles from opposing viewpoints. I think it's important to understand how these people think, right? How your opponents think, because they are your countrymen and women. So I was reading like Politico articles, Slate, and every one of those followed up with basically like he was a divisive figure on the right. I mean, they went everything. The only thing they fell short of saying was that he was alt-right, like just coming right out and saying it. But everything was implying that, right? And it's just not the case. But now anything that is right of left, I mean, think about Joe Rogan, right? They call him alt-right. I mean, that's insane. Like, I'm a conservative. Joe Rogan's pretty classical liberal. And like me and him agree on probably the only thing might be like Second Amendment rights. And even that probably varies to what degree. But that as well as free speech, like being able to express yourself freely without government oppression or interference. So it just shows, again, it's just another example of how they don't live in the same reality we do. And so you can't deal with them as if they do. They have to be ostracized. And I do believe there's redemption for everybody. And when they redeem themselves or God redeems them, absolutely welcome them back to the table to have a conversation. But until then, no, they don't deserve a place where adults are speaking. So that being said, you hear this, right? I was watching a video because somebody had pointed out that the person in the images, when they had first released those yesterday, kind of looked like this bullhorn guy that Charlie Kirk once got into debate with, and the guy just basically started busting out the bullhorn, yelling at him and saying, "Oh, you're a fascist, you're a fascist." He couldn't prove anything that Charlie Kirk said wrong, because they never do. They never address the points being made, right? It's always, well, you're this, or this is what the case is. Then we rebuttal with facts. Well, you're a fascist. You're a Nazi. Whatever. I mean, pick the term. I do want to talk about, though, how to kind of counter these types of people, right? Have them define, when they call you a fascist, have them define it. Okay, what do you think a fascist is? So that way you know exactly what you're arguing against and what exactly they're arguing for. And then follow up with more questions. So how does that apply to this specific argument? How is, for instance, securing borders, how is that fascist? I don't recall exactly how many countries there are in the world, but I would say 99.9% of them have policies in place that secure their borders. You can't just walk into any country, waltz in and be like, I'm a citizen now. Like that's not a thing. So if America's fascist for doing it, so is everybody else. And it's just not the case, right? This is a normal thing. And then can you respond to my point with a rebuttal, not a label? When you ask them to respond to a certain argument, and a good example that I have is usually abortion, the abortion argument, right? No matter what you say, what your argument is, the default go-to for abortion is, but what about rape and incest? And when you bring up to the fact to them that number is actually anywhere, depending on your sources, probably roughly between 3 and 6% of all abortions, and the remaining abortions are for reasons of convenience, is what it's categorized under. So like, oh, I want to finish school, I'm not ready yet, financially stable, whatever it is, even if it's like I want to party more, whatever. Like those all fall under reasons of convenience. I'm too young. Anything like that, right? Basically anything outside of rape and incest. And then I believe health of a mother is actually, I can't remember the term for it, but it's categorized as something else. But I think that actually falls within that 6% too. So we're not talking about like if the mother's life is at risk or the baby's life is at risk here. What we're talking about is like basically, I'm just not ready to have a kid. When you bring that up, after they go to that, well, what about cases of rape and incest? Then they go right to the name calling, because that shot down their argument. When you say that, and for me, I think as a conservative, this would be a happy compromise. Let's get rid of all those convenience cases of abortion, right? Let's get rid of those. And then, yeah, let's allow the woman to make the choice in cases of rape, incest, and medical, dire medical reasons. I think that's fair. I think that's a reason, or at least a fair compromise, that I know I would be happy with. 96% out of 700,000 a year. That's a lot of babies we could save. And then, sometimes they do go to, oh, well, who's going to adopt all these babies? Because you say, there's always the option for adoption. Well, who's going to adopt all these babies? And Charlie Kirk spoke a lot about this, how there's a million people, I think it is, every year on the waiting list waiting to adopt a baby. That means you could adopt every baby that was aborted and still have people on the waiting list. And then let's throw in the fact that it costs what, an average of like $500 to get an abortion and anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000 to adopt a child. I mean, tell me how that isn't backwards. Anyway, so that was kind of a use case, right, where this is what happens. Like, you question them, you pose facts to them, you pose statistics. They will always end up in insults or rage quitting or, getting emotionally heightened and animated and not having an actual argument if you keep them focused on it. And I think that's why you're seeing now this rising tension, because they're realizing now that their lies are working on less and less people. And people are just fed up with it, right? We've seen the results of what the left wanted us to do. We've been doing it for 20 years now, at least. And it's not working. It's just producing worse and worse and worse outcomes, and it's not as simple as like it's a direct translation, but all the things as a combined are producing worse outcomes. People are more depressed than ever. Kids, women, men, all more depressed than ever. One, I think getting back to God, and so I'm going to bring this all the way back because I said this in my first video. What is the solution? The real solution is getting back to God as a nation. The real solution is preaching the gospel. The real solution is letting people know that even though this world has its turmoils, you can still experience joy. You can still experience happiness in the sense of being content, right? We chase this dream of happiness as if it's something that material gain or status will bring to us, instead of learning how to be content where we are. And I know what's going to happen. Well, what about the people on the streets? Right. Well, let's teach them how to better their lives so that they can be content where they are. And it's not the responsibility of the government to intervene and help out the brother. Like if you read the gospel, it doesn't say vote for a government that loves your neighbor as yourself. Jesus commands us to do that. Love God first, and then love our neighbor as we love ourselves. And that can manifest in so many different ways. I think people think like that means, oh, I got to give up a paycheck to help the guy on the street. No, dude, it can be as simple as, helping your friend down the street, I don't know, put in a fireplace, right? Or paint their walls. It can be anything. It can be offering to help them or just being a shoulder to lean on and listen if they're going through a hard time. People like, it doesn't have to be this grand gesture. I think that happens from, I don't know, the American gospel, I think. We have a lot of influence put onto us through entertainment. And I think it has skewed our perspective of reality in every sense of the word. That's a whole different conversation. And you'll find, as we do these videos, I digress a lot because there's always a lot going on in my mind. I think a lot about different things, and I like to read about what's going on in the world. And so like, I'll go off on these tangents as I just have. But all of this is going back to the fact that like, if we are going to heal in this nation, I think we really got to put God first. And it needs to start with the people who say they put God first. You can't go out there and like, you know, be a poor ambassador to God and just be like, God this, God that, fuck you. You know, like, and excuse my language. You just can't do that. Like, that's not what God told us to do. And that's the exact hypocrisy that we see from the left day in and day out. So it's not going to do us any good to fight it. And when, you know, I said in my video, like, I'm done playing games. I'm done playing games. Yeah. I'm not going to pretend we're dealing with anything other than what we're dealing with. But you still have to pray for your enemies. You still have to engage with them. And you can do it truthfully, honestly, and with dignity in mind. You don't have to be depraved individual and go around and talking down to people. I understand we all get heightened and filled up with emotion, right? So we get very animated. I'm guilty of doing this a lot. But you can always bring it back down. And you can always apologize for anything you misspoke about. And you can always apologize for anything, you know, that any poor reaction that you had, right? Now, I wouldn't apologize to some of these people, to be honest. I'm talking about reasonable people. Again, these people shouldn't have a place at the table anymore. You can love them. You can pray for them. God doesn't call you to engage with them and subject yourself to their demonic behavior. If anybody can show me differently in Scripture, I challenge you to do it. Anyways, that's all I got for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you liked it, please subscribe. If you know anybody that wants to, you know, have a discussion with me, and it doesn't have to just be about politics. It can be literally about anything. I do love talking about anything. I love learning, so I'm happy to talk to somebody about something I have no knowledge about. So, you know, just refer them to me. Again, grownassmenpodcast@gmail.com. Send me an email. I'm happy to talk to anybody. Would love to get the podcast side of these things going instead of me just talking to you on a camera. Again, like and subscribe if you like the content, and I appreciate you watching. Thanks.